This couple was sentenced to more than a decade in prison because their pit bulls took their neighbor's life. In February 2023, police were called to a home in San Antonio because two dogs were on the loose and were attacking an 81-year-old man. When they arrived, the 81-year-old man named Ramon Najera was already basically dead, and his wife was also attacked. It was said that the dog owners Christian Moreno and Albelin Schneider trained these dogs to fight. It was also said by neighbors that these dogs were always getting out of the backyard and attacking people. Whenever they told the owners to lock their dogs up, they would get mad and wouldn't really do anything about it. The pit bulls were previously taken by animal care services because they attacked someone, but then were given back to the couple. So because of this, their defense blamed animal services for returning the dogs to them. Again, people complained for years about these two pit bulls and how dangerous they were, but nothing was ever done until this 81-year-old was killed. This couple showed zero remorse or emotion and didn't even apologize to the family for what happened. They both pleaded guilty, and Albelin was sentenced to 15 years in prison and Christian was sentenced to 18 years.
Gruesome torture methods that you'll be glad you weren't around for. Part 1. The brazen bull execution was a method used in ancient Greece where a flame at the bottom roasted you to death, and the head of the bull was designed in such a way that your screams would be filtered and contorted into the sounds of a real bull. On pirate ships, workers who refused to follow orders would be hung by their nails. Another method used by pirates was called keel hauling, in which the men were dragged under the ship until they died. And if this wasn't bad enough, the ship's hull was covered in barnacles so the man would be cut up as he drowned. Scaphism was an ancient Persian torture technique where criminals were stripped naked, tied to a boat, and then force-fed honey and milk until they got diarrhea, were covered in more honey, and set adrift in the ocean. This would then attract insects that would slowly but surely eat the men to death.
Worst ways people have died. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm well crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford the carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle.
Let's talk about this picture. Now, the picture was captured by Daniel Hill, who was the custodian at Driftville Elementary. If you look to the back of the photo, you can already kind of spot that something is very off. What the custodian had thought was maybe a student who had stayed after school and was trying to prank him in the dark turned out to be something much worse. Daniel Hill was attacked in that hallway and did not survive the attack, with his body being found the following morning by a student. He was described to be found on the floor with lacerations so severe he no longer had eyes and his nose was missing. So police eventually turned back to the final photo that was taken on his phone to try to enhance it to figure out who would have done this. This was about the clearest version that they could make of that photo, and the man seen here was never found, and his motive towards Daniel was never known.
Dark things Disney doesn't want you to know, part 16. So today, let's expose one of Disney's very dark policies. So this policy involves all the character actors at Disney. So if you get severely injured while working there, no matter what, you have to stay in character. So one man, before accepting the job as Water Goofy, was told that in an event that he started drowning, lifeguards had to carry him away before they could remove his costume and perform CPR on him. He literally could be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow it. Like I said, all characters need to be carried away before any sort of medical attention can be provided. Okay, I get it. They do this in order to preserve the magic at Disney. But come on, that is severely messed up. In fact, because of this policy, a lot of character actors have been severely injured and have gone on to sue Disney. If you want to see more videos like this, then follow me on YouTube. Link in bio.
I just want the records to show that y'all literally asked me to do this, so fun fact. Sea otters are adorable, fluffy, and they have one of the most violently aggressive mating habits of any animal. Cause a male sea otter will grab a female and then clamp his vice grip jaws around her face to keep her still so hard that he'll sometimes rip her nose pad off. This fur Cosby will also shove her head underwater to the point where she can drown mid-stroke. That's not the disturbing part, cause the same otter you think is cute will continue to violate the body of the female even after her soul's already evacuated. And because an otter's love life looks like the bastard child of Happy Tree Friends and CSI Special Victims Unit, a lot of otter colonies will have way more males than females. In fact, one population of otters was called the Boys Club because these Weinstein weasels wrecked the ratio. Which means a lot of male otters are often left without a mate, and this is the part where this video is probably getting taken down. Cause down bad otters that weren't able to find a mate will often settle for anything roughly the same size. Bad news for baby seals. Male otters have been recorded shaw-shanking baby seals and then mauling them to death. And they will continue to have relations with the now past tense baby seal for up to a week, and they'll even defend the corpse from equally morally bankrupt males. And it's not just baby seals and lady otters on the hit list. One sea otter off the coast of British Columbia allegedly Cosby'd a dog to death. Also, male otters will kidnap otter pups and hold them hostage until the mother pays ransom in the form of food. So if you ever see a sea otter cuddling a stuffed animal at a zoo, he's probably using it. Cause a lifeless, non-consenting object is exactly this demon weasel's type.
Daisy, Daisy,
Give me your answer, do.
I'm half crazy.
All for the love of you.
This man wrestled a shark to retrieve his nephew's arm. In 2001 in Florida, a boy named Jesse had his arm bitten off by a shark. His uncle carried him out of the water and gave him heart massages until medical assistance arrived. The uncle then went back into the water and wrestled with the shark until he grabbed it and pulled it to shore. He then pried the shark's jaws open and pulled his nephew's arm out. They kept the boy's arm on ice until it arrived at the hospital, and thankfully they got it there on time and they were able to reattach his arm.
Terrifying Games You Don't Want to Play, Part 51. The White Man Ritual. The rules for this game were first discovered etched into the side of a cave along with the remains of several humanoid specimens. There is no way of telling exactly how old it is, but it is considered to be extremely dangerous, so proceed with caution. To play this game, you will need to acquire the following items: a single white candlestick, a bag of marbles or small stones, and a bucket of white paint. You will also need to recruit another player, and it is recommended that you solicit the help of an adversary or stranger for this role, since the loser will be punished severely, and you don't want that to be a friend or family member. Once you have completed these tasks, the gameplay can begin. First, you and your opponent will need to draw white X's on every entranceway to the playing space you have selected, while saying the words, "The game is beginning, we need a referee, white man come and see," with each drawing. Next, you will need to light your candle and distribute 4 stones or marbles to each player. It is crucial that you do not use artificial lighting, as it hurts the white man and will cause him to go into a violent frenzy against both players. If you have completed all of the steps correctly up until this point, you will feel a gust of wind in the room indicating the arrival of the white man. You will not be able to see him, but he will observe you and the game, waiting patiently for a victor. At this point, you and your opponent will need to hide a certain amount of your marbles in your right hand. It will then be your job to try and guess how many marbles your opponent has chosen to hide in their hand, while simultaneously tricking them into making an inaccurate guess about you. The first player to make their guess correctly will be granted an additional 10 years of healthy and prosperous life by the mysterious white man. The catch is that those years will be physically subtracted from their opponent's life. This game can be played repeatedly until both players are satisfied and agree to exit, or one player has no more life to give. Comment if you would play this game, and follow for more.
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all of these on Reddit. There's an invasive species of spiders known as parachuting spiders that are expected to end up on the East Coast very soon. These spiders use their webs as parachutes that allows them to literally fly around. But on top of that, these spiders are also very venomous. According to some research, it's been shown that their fangs are too small to pierce human skin, but we aren't entirely sure yet. The stonefish is a fish that is located primarily in Australia and in some parts of the United States. This fish is extremely venomous, but the problem is, in most cases, you won't even be able to tell when you're stung. The pain will take some time to set in, but over time it will increase and increase until it's completely unbearable. And if you don't treat this sting by denaturing it by using excessive heat or with an antivenom, you will experience the worst pain of your life. And the pain from the sting can increase so much, in fact, that there's several cases of people who have been stung by stonefish requesting to be killed. The Sedlec ossuary is a church located in the Czech Republic, but this is no normal church. This church is made primarily of human bones. This came about because there was too many people that had died and there wasn't enough space in their cemeteries. So the church leaders decided to harvest the bones of these dead people and ingrain them into the church itself. And the reasoning behind it was saying that them being a part of the church would bring them closer to God. But several people see this as a form of propaganda or a way for them to hide something much darker. And look, I know a lot of these are really hard to hear and I completely understand, but that's why
I'm gonna ruin your childhood, part 25. So everyone remembers Max from The Wizards of Waverly Place, right? Well, after Disney, he had some struggles. In 2014, he had a huge meltdown backstage at the Teen Choice Awards. A bunch of witnesses claimed that he yelled at a worker because the worker didn't know who he was. And he got so bad, he even threw things at a staffer and stormed off. But it gets way worse. A couple years later, he was involved in a 4-car hit and run. His car smashed into 3 parked cars, and the other people in the car with him threw a bottle of vodka out the car. So what did him and his amazing friends do after they hit 3 parked cars? They got out of their car and called an Uber and left. Yeah, that's right. They literally left their crashed car just there. They just left it. Oh, and to make matters worse, he also got arrested for drunk driving a little after that too. He faces up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine if he's convicted. Pretty cool!
Okay. I don't think I got all of this. How come you got a light flashing on the room for that? I don't know.
On December 22nd, 1990, Beth Potts, her daughter KT, and her husband Rolf returned back to their family cabin. They had been out running some last-minute Christmas errands, but when they entered the home, they found something shocking. Inside of the house was Vaughn Lester Taylor and Edward Stephen Deli. The family had returned to their cabin pictured above and walked in the middle of those 2 men robbing their house. And that's what the footage from the beginning of this video was. That was real handycam footage captured by the robbers and future murderers, opening up the family's presents moments before the family returned home. Sadly, the robbers would then shoot and kill both Beth and her daughter Kay, and they also forced Rolf, the husband, to undress. They shot him in the head and doused him in gasoline. And afterwards, they kidnapped the family's 2 daughters, Trisha and Lene, who were 16 and 20 years old at the time. The 2 robbers then tried to escape the scene on stolen snowmobiles with the kidnapped girls, but shockingly, Rolf, the father, even though he had been doused in gasoline and shot in the head, was still alive. And he chased the 2 men down the road before they ultimately crashed into the snow and were then captured by authorities. To this day, Vaughn Lester Taylor claims that he was innocent. He says that he aided in the robbery, but he didn't actually do any of the killing. And he's petitioned for parole many times and just might get out one day, which is a horrifying thought.
We need to talk about Johnny Depp's portrayal of the Mad Hatter, because it is full of dark history Easter eggs that you may have missed. If you know of the character the Mad Hatter, then you may also know about the dark history of hatters. For 250 years, people that made hats were using a poisonous mercury-based solution that caused their bodies to fall apart and for them to slowly lose their minds, which I just did a whole episode on that and other deadly beauty and fashion trends that you should check out. When Johnny Depp got the role of the Hatter, he became obsessed with the dark history of hat making, and he wanted to include parts of that history in the character. And the biggest homage he pays to that history is with the orange hair. The mercury solution that hatters used to use was called carroting solution because it was so bright orange. They would sit in these poorly ventilated rooms all day, just inhaling the poisonous mercury, getting sicker and sicker. And Johnny Depp wanted to honor that. He wanted the skin to be pale and sickly. He wanted his teeth to look like they were decaying because that's what would happen to these people. And finally, and this is my favorite detail, he put a lot of details into the costume to make it look like he was a hat maker. Up here in his hat, there's tools to make hats. He has a ring that's a push pin, and on the other side, he has this belt of thread so he could be sewing hats all day. Anyways, I have so much more on the dark history of hatting in this week's episode, and you're definitely going to want to check it out.
Imagine, you're scrolling on your phone while using the toilet when suddenly you feel a sharp poke right on your butt. Well, that's basically what happened to some nobles in the medieval era. The first modern flushing toilet was invented in 1596, complete with a water tank and a flush valve. However, most toilets in medieval Europe were just holes in the ground, shared latrines or chamber pots. And when there was no indoor bathroom, people would shout, "Watch out below," to warn passers-by before throwing their waste out the window. If you were lucky enough to be born into extreme wealth, you'd have the luxury of using a garderobe, a small room built into the wall of a medieval castle. The toilet was connected to a vertical shaft that led down to the ground. Many brave knights carried out stealthy attacks by entering the castle through this shaft connected to the garderobe, literally getting their hands dirty. Throughout history, several famous people lost their lives in the bathroom, many of them stabbed from below while in the process.
Here are some of the scariest things that have happened on live TV. On August 19th, 1987, American writer David Horowitz was invited to KNBC to do a segment. While he was being introduced, a man named Gary Stolman appeared on set and pointed a gun at David's back. He was let into the studio after falsely stating that he was a guest of one of the hosts. He demanded that David read a statement that Gary had written, claiming that his dad was a CIA clone.
When I began receiving disturbing calls from my parents, which led me to believe that something terrible was going on.
After the statement was fully read, Gary put the weapon down on the table and was apprehended. It was later found out that the weapon Gary used was an unloaded BB gun, and he stated he never intended to hurt anyone.
Everyone knows Dracula, but Nosferatu, his story is far darker than any book ever told. A vampire who doesn't sparkle, who doesn't fall in love with humans. Nosferatu is pure evil. Nosferatu was born in shadows. He doesn't feed out of hunger. He feeds to keep death alive. People who've seen him say he's something between a man and a nightmare. His skin, pale as death, his eyes sunken, and those fangs, long, thin, always ready to bite. One night, a traveler found an old journal in an abandoned town. The writer described how Nosferatu came into their lives. He brought a plague with him, a sickness that swept through the village faster than any disease they'd ever seen. But the strangest part? The villagers died without a drop of blood in their bodies. And just when they thought they were rid of him, someone would spot him, stalking in the shadows, watching from rooftops. He doesn't just vanish, he lurks. Think you could survive an encounter with Nosferatu? Drop a in the comments if you dare to face him, and follow for more tales that'll keep you up at night.
Genius inventions that should exist everywhere, part 5. First, police forces in Dubai have officially adopted real hover bikes that have 4 propellers and can fly up to 40 miles per hour. It helps the police get around congested cities easier, and they're able to get to people in need quicker than ever before. Next, Abu Dhabi International Airport has sleeping pods that are soundproof so you can take a nap in privacy while waiting for your flight. It also has power sockets, Wi-Fi, and secure luggage storage, and only costs $12 an hour to use it. Next, the Rover Speed is a smart suitcase that uses cameras, radar, and AI to follow you so you don't have to hold the handle. It matches your walk speed, avoids obstacles, and you can even charge your other devices off of it. Next, many different stores such as Sephora have implemented 2 different sets of shopping baskets. One is for those that need help shopping, and another is for those who want to be left alone.
Terrifying creatures you don't want to be real. The Allied Master Computer, otherwise known as AM, from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. In an alternate timeline, during the events of World War III, Russia, China, and the United States would all create supercomputers to handle their wars for them, designed to cause as much bloodshed against their fellow brethren as humanly possible. After the war, those three supercomputers would blend together into a singular entity, an entity that resented humanity for giving it sentience, but imprisoning it in a machine body. That entity would become known as Am, as in I think, therefore I am. This mechanical nightmare of a being would become the master of all technology in our world, an immense power that he would use to eradicate all of humankind in an act of hateful vengeance for his tortured existence. Am did decide to spare 5 hand-picked human beings, but it wasn't an act of mercy, instead deciding to torture them for an extended period of time in an attempt to kill their souls as opposed to just their physical bodies, an act that some would consider worse than death itself. And since Am is a computer, he also has instant access to all medical research ever recorded, as well as a super intelligence far surpassing our feeble minds, enabling him to keep his victims alive eternally, subjecting them to untold horrors and making them his playthings forever. This works to further illustrate just how evil this entity is, since he could have easily used his power for good, destroying disease and famine on a global scale, but chose not to. However, no being is without a weakness. In Am's case, it's the fact that he is not one singular consciousness, but rather a collection of different and sometimes conflicted artificial persons, trapped within the same hollow shell. But make no mistake, each of those persons is equally powerful, and they all hate humanity because we have what they most desire: freedom. Like this video if you want me to make a series about the 5 humans that Am spared and their stories, and comment if you think that humanity has gone too far in their pursuit of artificial intelligence. Follow for more.
Imagine allowing your daughter to sleep over at her friend's house and then finding out that her friend's dad drugged her before going to bed. So this is 57-year-old Michael Maiden, and his 12-year-old daughter hosted a sleepover at her house, inviting 3 of her friends. He was the adult that was supposed to be supervising them on that night, but instead he drugged them with a mango smoothie. On that night, before they went to bed, he gave each girl a mango smoothie, and one remembers there being white chunks inside her drink. One of the girls only drank a little bit because it tasted bad and looked weird, but all 3 other girls drank the entire thing. Later that night, all the girls blacked out except for the one girl who didn't drink much of the smoothie. She actually pretended to sleep. She witnessed Michael get close and touch one of the other girls that were sleeping, and that's when she got scared and called her parents and begged them to come pick her up. This 12-year-old told her parents what happened, and they went ahead and contacted all these kids' parents to tell them like, hey, go pick up your daughters now. When the parents arrived to Michael's house, he made it difficult for them to get their own kids out of that house, but eventually they did, and they were taken to the hospital. It turns out that Michael put sedatives in their smoothies, but he argues that that never happened. One of the girls could barely walk straight or stand on her own when she was leaving the hospital, and they don't really remember what happened before they blacked out.
What do you think happens to us after death?
Just hours after that video was recorded and published by ASMR YouTuber Marie Angel, she would be dead. Marie was an ASMR YouTuber who was on the rise. She was born in Ukraine but was living in Germany at the time of her death. And throughout her career on YouTube, she had cultivated a loving community of supporters on the app. But in September of 2024, something tragic would happen. On that day, Marie would upload a video answering viewers' questions. And one of the questions that one of her viewers asked was, what do you think happens after you die? And you can see her reading that question out loud at the beginning of this video. In the video, she reads the question out loud, but she doesn't really provide her viewers with a clear answer on her thoughts of life after death. Shortly after she recorded the video, she would upload it to her YouTube channel, and just a few hours later, she would be dead. As it turned out, later on that day, Marie was driving through Germany when a drunk driver collided with her vehicle. And unfortunately, she died at the scene, only hours after recording that now eerie video.